The lights hit her rearview mirror before the siren had even finished its first breath. Zara Colton's hands went tight on the wheel, not panic, just muscle memory from a life spent reacting to things that came without warning. She hadn't been speeding. The light had turned yellow 50 yards back, and she'd eased off the gas the way she always did, the way her right knee reminded her to do every time she let the foot drop too fast. She was 3 blocks from her apartment. She was exhausted. She was supposed to be home. She put on her signal, pulled to the curb, cut the engine. In the side mirror, she watched the officer approach. He was broad through the shoulders, unhurried, one hand resting near his belt in that practiced way that meant something without saying anything. When he reached her window, he stood upright, forcing her to tilt her neck back to see his face. His nameplate said Linton. License and registration. No reason, no greeting, just the words dropped like they cost him nothing. Zara kept her voice level. "They're in the glove box. I'm reaching." Her right hand had a tremor in it tonight, worse than usual after 12 hours on her feet. It had been there since the blast in Helmand Province that put 3 pieces of shrapnel into her lower back and severed a ligament in her knee. The doctors at Walter Reed called it nerve interference. Zara called it Tuesday. She fumbled the latch, pulled the documents free, held them out. Linton took them without looking at her. "Where are you coming from?" "Millhaven General. I worked there." He looked up then, but not the way a person looks at someone. More the way you look at a statement you've already decided you don't believe. "You smell like antiseptic." "I'm a nurse. I usually do." He handed back her license. "Step out of the vehicle." Zara's stomach dropped. "Can I ask why you pulled me over?" "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." There it was, the ma'am that had nothing polite in it. She unbuckled her seatbelt and got out slowly, gripping the doorframe as she found her footing. The knee didn't like night air or fatigue or standing still after long shifts, and tonight it announced all 3 at once. She stood on the sidewalk and felt Linton's eyes move over her the way people's eyes always moved when they saw the slight hitch in her stride, trying to categorize it, trying to decide whether it was real. "You've been drinking?" he asked. "No." "You seem unsteady." "I have a service-related injury, my knee and lower back. I've been on my feet since 6 this morning." Linton tilted his head, service-related. "Army, 6 years, 2 deployments." He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he walked around to the passenger side of her car and opened the door without asking. Zara didn't move. She listened to him go through the glove box, pull things out of the door pockets, work his way to the back seat. Then his hand found her work bag, a compact canvas kit she kept in the passenger footwell for the she got called in last minute and didn't have time to go home. Gauze, a stethoscope, a blood pressure cuff, and in the front zipper pocket, 3 orange prescription bottles. Linton brought them out and held them up one at a time under the streetlight. "These yours?" "Yes, they're prescribed. You can call my doctor." He set all 3 bottles on the hood of her car in a line, like he was building a case out of nothing. Oxycodone, low dose 12 hours old. Cyclobenzaprine, hydroxyxine. Zara had been managing that rotation for 2 years. She knew every milligram, every timing window, every interaction. She was a nurse. It was the only way she kept herself functional. That's quite a bit of medication. "It's prescribed." "For what?" "Chronic pain, combat injury. It's all documented." "You drive on these?" "They're not impairing. I haven't taken the oxycodone since noon." Linton folded his arms. He looked at her with an expression that could have been suspicion or could have been contempt. Hard to tell the difference from where she was standing. "I want you to walk a straight line for me." Zara felt the trap close around her like a jaw. If she tried, she'd fail. Not because of the medications, not because of anything she'd done wrong, but because her knee didn't track straight on a good day, and tonight it felt like wet cement. If she refused, Linton would write it as non-compliance. Either way, the story ended the same. "I can't walk a straight line," she said carefully. "Not because I'm impaired, because of my injury. I have documentation at home and in my medical records. You can contact the VA outpatient clinic on Garrison Road." I'm not calling anyone, Linton said. Walk the line or I'm taking you in. Zara's jaw tightened. She'd been patient. She'd been correct. She'd said the right words in the right tone, and none of it mattered, because he'd made up his mind before he even reached her window. She could see it in the way he held himself. Not trying to determine anything, just waiting for the moment he could make the paperwork official. She reached slowly into her jacket pocket and pulled out her phone. I'm making a call, she said. You can watch me do it. Put the phone down. I have the right to call someone. I said, put it down. She unlocked the screen. She went to a contact near the top of her list, not a lawyer, not a doctor, not anyone she could explain quickly, and pressed call. It rang twice. Colton. The voice on the other end was clipped and familiar. It's me, she said. I need you. Corner of Ashton and 5th Millhaven. A pause. How long? As fast as you can. Stand by. The line went dead. Linton stepped toward her, and she slipped the phone back into her pocket. His face had gone tight. Who did you just call? Zara didn't answer. She heard the engines before she saw the lights. Not sirens, just the low, controlled sound of vehicles moving with precision. 3 black SUVs rolled into the intersection and stopped in formation, blocking both lanes. The doors opened in sequence, and the people who stepped out were dressed in tactical gear with no visible insignia. They moved the way people moved when doing something for the 1,000th time. No wasted motion, no noise, no performance. One of them walked directly toward Linton. She was older, maybe 50, with gray at her temples and eyes that had the particular quality of someone who had long since stopped being impressed by anything. Officer, her voice was calm, almost kind, step away from the vehicle. Linton blinked. Who the hell are you? She showed him a badge. Federal. Military Criminal Investigations. Step away from the vehicle. Linton took 2 steps back, and in those 2 steps something changed in him. Something that had nothing to do with posture and everything to do with the sudden realization that the ground he'd been standing on wasn't what he thought it was. The agent walked past him without another glance and stopped in front of Zara. Mrs. Colton. Her voice was different now, still even, but something softer underneath. Are you all right? Zara nodded, though her hands were still shaking. We've got it from here, the agent said. Go home. Someone will contact you tomorrow. Another agent was already approaching Linton with a tablet. Zara caught fragments of what was said: unlawful detention, violation of federal statute, body camera footage to be surrendered within 24 hours. She watched Linton's face go through several expressions in the space of about 10 seconds. She picked up her 3 prescription bottles from the hood of her car, put them back in her work bag, and got in the driver's seat. When she pulled away from the curb, she didn't look back. The apartment was dark, and she stood in it without turning on the lights for a long time. Her knee was screaming. Her back was worse. She went to the bathroom and pressed both hands against the sink and looked at her own face until she stopped seeing her own face and started seeing the pill bottles lined up on the hood of her car. The careful arrangement of them. The deliberateness of it. She ran cold water until she stopped shaking. Her phone buzzed. A text from her coworker, Brianna. You okay? Something's trending on Twitter about a nurse getting pulled over. Zara typed back, I'm fine. Long story. Tomorrow. She turned off her phone and went to bed. She didn't sleep. The federal investigator's name was Agent Malone, and she worked out of an office in a building on the east side of Millhaven that you'd never find unless someone told you where to look. Zara showed up the next morning with her VA discharge paperwork, her prescription records, and her hospital ID badge, and she laid them all on the conference table without being asked. Malone had brown eyes and a posture that suggested she'd spent her career being underestimated and had found that useful. I've reviewed the footage, Malone said. Linton's body cam, his dash cam, and 2 bystander recordings. I need your account in your own words. Zara told her everything. Malone listened without interrupting, just made occasional notes on a tablet. When Zara finished, Malone set the tablet down. Officer Linton has been with Millhaven PD for 5 years. Commendations, no sustained complaints. Zara's chest tightened. Clean record. On paper, Malone opened a folder, but we found something. The file she slid across the table was dated 14 months earlier. A traffic stop. Female driver. Black. Late 30s. She'd filed a complaint for unlawful search and filed it properly, documented it herself. The complaint had been closed after 11 days. Insufficient evidence, it said. Witness uncooperative. She didn't become uncooperative, Malone said quietly. Someone visited her workplace, made clear that her recent speeding tickets and a dismissed restraining order from her divorce would become very relevant if she kept pushing. Zara's hand went flat on the folder. There are 4 more, Malone said. 4 folders, spread across the table, different names, different dates, different versions of the same night. Zara looked at the photographs attached to each report, faces that were tired in a specific way she recognized, the exhaustion of having tried and been told it wasn't worth it. Why didn't anyone see the pattern? She asked. Because none of them made it through the official process. They gave up before the complaint became official record. But I didn't give up. No, Malone said, you didn't. The counter-complaint arrived 4 days later. Malone called her early, voice tight. Linton's union rep filed a statement this morning. They're claiming you became physically aggressive during the stop, threatening gestures, refusal of lawful commands. Zara sat down on the edge of her bed. That's not what happened. I know, but it's out there now, and we need to document everything that proves your compliance. Witnesses, footage timeline, all of it. The union rep gave a statement to the press that afternoon. He used the phrase disgruntled veteran twice, and the phrase seeking compensation 3 times. By evening, the story had shifted on social media. Half the accounts were calling for Linton's termination. The other half were sharing pictures of him at a charity youth basketball event with a caption that read, "This is the man they're trying to destroy." Zara did not go online. Malone had told her not to. She almost managed it. When she finally looked, she found the comment that said she was lying. She found the one that said veterans use their service as a shield. She found one that said she'd clearly been on something and the cop was just doing his job. And she found one that said, would any of this have happened if no one had been filming? What happens to the next person when there's no camera? She stared at that one for a long time. She turned off her phone and called Major Reed. He picked up on the second ring. I saw it, he said before she could say anything. They're calling me a liar. People who are scared do that. I keep thinking about the 4 people who quit, the ones who dropped their complaints. I know. Were they wrong to? Was it rational? Because right now, sitting here, I understand exactly why they did it. Reed was quiet for a moment. You know what the difference is between you and them? Don't say me. You've been in situations where giving up meant someone else died, he said. You know in your body what the real cost is. That's not an easy thing to unknow. She didn't say anything. You also know, he continued, that backup showed up. And backup shows up because someone made the call. You made the call, Colton. Now let the people who came hold the line for a while. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. Go to sleep, he said. Fight tomorrow. She was at the grocery store 10 days later when her phone rang. Malone, voice stripped of its usual steadiness. Turn on the news. What happened? Linton is dead. The words didn't land right away. Zara stood in the cereal aisle with her basket in her hand and the fluorescent lights humming overhead, and the words just sat there, not connecting to anything. What? She said. Apparent suicide this morning. I need you to stay where you are and not talk to anyone until I call you back. Zara left her basket in the aisle and walked out to her car. She sat in the parking lot for 40 minutes. The news was already everywhere when she finally looked. His photo, his years of service, his wife giving a statement through tears. The headline on one site read, Officer's Death Follows Week of Federal Pressure. A different site had her name in the subheadline. She turned the phone face down on the passenger seat and drove to a motel off the highway and paid cash for a room. She sat on the edge of the bed in her coat with the TV off, and the curtains closed, and felt the full weight of what it meant to have started something that she could not now unstart. His wife called her. She didn't know how she got the number. The voice on the other end was grief-cracked and certain. "You took everything from him. My children don't have a father because of you." The line went dead. Zara sat in the dark and didn't move for a very long time. Malone called at 11. "There's something you need to know," she said. The medical examiner's preliminary report came back. And Linton's blood alcohol was 0.21. His wife says he didn't drink. Personnel file confirms it. He'd refused alcohol at every department event for 5 years. Teetotaler. Zara's hand tightened on the phone. "There's also bruising on his forearms," Malone continued, "and the handwriting analysis on the note is showing inconsistencies. We're running additional tests. You think someone staged it. I think it's not as simple as it looks, and until we know more, I need you somewhere you're not visible." Why? Because if someone did this, they did it partly to make you look like you drove a good man to his death. And that narrative is already half written. The comments are doing the rest of the work for whoever started it. Zara stared at the water-stained ceiling of the motel room. "Colton," Malone said, "are you still with me?" "I'm here." "Stay there tonight. We'll have something more tomorrow." They found the burner phone records 48 hours later. The night Linton died, he'd made 3 calls. The first to his wife at 7, the second to his union rep at 9, the third at 10:40 to a prepaid phone purchased with cash from a gas station near the south side. Security footage from the gas station gave them a face. Facial recognition gave them a name, Crawford Hale, not in the department list, not in Linton's personnel file, but in a Millhaven PD precinct employment roster from 8 years ago. Crawford Hale had been Linton's training officer. They brought him in. He came with a lawyer and a composed expression that lasted exactly as long as it took Malone to slide the traffic camera still across the table. His car, his face, a quarter mile from Linton's house at 10:53 that night. The composure left after that. He said he hadn't killed anyone. He said Linton had been spiraling, that he'd gone to talk him down, that he'd given him something to calm his nerves. A sedative, left over from a surgery, nothing prescribed, and that when Linton had gotten up and gone to the lockbox and come back with the gun, he'd tried to stop him, and then he'd run. He said he'd run because he panicked. Malone asked him who had paid him to go there. He asked for his lawyer. Malone showed him the wire transfer, $20,000, 4 days before Linton's death, from a shell account in Delaware. The account led, through 2 layers of subsidiary, to the Millhaven Police Officers Benefit Association's Legal Defense Reserve Fund. Crawford Hale looked at the document for a long time. Then he started talking. The union's legal director was named Baxter Pruill. He'd been in the position for 11 years. He had a reputation for protecting the department's liability exposure with a thoroughness that people in the building called fastidious and people outside the building called something else. Pruill had known about the complaints, all 5 of them, and 4 others that had never made it to a formal file at all. He had not buried them through incompetence. He had buried them through infrastructure, a process he'd built over a decade that routed complaints through an informal review stage before they ever became official, where they could be discouraged, redirected, or quietly closed. When Linton became a federal matter instead of an internal one, Pruill had decided that a cop who might cooperate with investigators was more dangerous than a cop who was no longer present. He hadn't ordered a murder. Crawford Hale insisted on that, and the evidence bore him out. What Pruill had ordered was containment. An emotionally vulnerable man, a sedative, a visit from someone he trusted, all of it calibrated to tip something that was already tilting. Whether Linton had pulled the trigger himself, or whether the combination of the sedative and the despair and the fear had made the difference, Pruill believed he could maintain plausible distance. He was wrong. The raids happened at 6 in the morning on a Thursday, simultaneous at Pruill's home, his office, and 3 other addresses tied to union officials. By noon, 4 arrests had been made. By evening, the union had announced an emergency suspension of operations. By the time the sun went down, the Millhaven Police Department's chief had submitted his resignation. Zara testified at trial in the spring. The prosecutor was a methodical woman named Vance who asked the questions in a particular order that built something the jury couldn't easily walk away from. When she asked the final question, "Why didn't you stop? Why didn't you step back when it kept getting harder?" Zara looked at the jury and gave the only answer she had. "Because I thought about the 4 people who did. I thought about what it cost them. And I thought about who comes after me if I quit." The jury was out for 6 hours. When they came back, they returned guilty on all counts. Baxter Pruill got 28 years. Crawford Hale pled out for 12, with parole eligibility in 7 in exchange for his testimony. Zara walked out of the courthouse and found Major Reed leaning against a car at the edge of the parking lot. "You eat today?" he asked. "Coffee. That's not food." "I know." He handed her a paper bag from the sandwich shop around the corner. She ate standing up, leaning against the car, watching the reporters pack up their equipment on the courthouse steps. "There's something opening up," Reed said after a while. "Federal Veterans Advocacy Program. They're building out a case intake unit. Need someone who knows what it looks like from the inside." Zara chewed, didn't answer immediately. "I'm not rushing you," he said. "I'm thinking." She thought about the 4 folders Malone had spread across the conference table. She thought about Rosa Medina, who had called her 2 weeks into the investigation, voice shaking, saying, "I saw your name, and I thought maybe someone would finally listen." Rosa had testified, had sat in that same witness box, and told her story for the first time in 14 months, and when it was over, she'd found Zara in the hallway and said nothing, just stood there with her eyes wet until Zara said it mattered. And Rosa had nodded like that was enough to carry. "I want to think about the local piece," Zara said, "before I think about the national one." "The local piece?" "There are people here who got run through this system and didn't get what Rosa got. They need something in the city they can actually reach." Reed looked at her sideways. "You're already building it in your head." "I've been building it in my head since the night in the parking lot." He didn't say anything for a moment. "Then you're going to need a space." "I found one. Old dry cleaner on Cartwright Street. Owners willing to lease it to a nonprofit." "You already looked." "I had time. I was trying not to go on Twitter." He laughed, a real one, not the compressed kind he usually allowed himself. The Colton Advocacy Center opened on a Tuesday in October, 3 months after the trial. The sign above the door was small, black text on a cream background. "When the system fails, we fight back." Rosa Medina helped paint the walls. 2 of the other original complainants came to set up chairs. The first session drew 31 people. Zara stood in front of them without notes. She told them the real version. The part where she'd sat in a motel parking lot, wondering if any of it was worth it. The part where she'd almost gone online and said things that would have handed Pruill's team exactly what they needed. The part where she'd cried in a car outside a grocery store while the news spun a story about a good man destroyed by a lying veteran. "I'm not standing here because I'm exceptional," she said. "I'm standing here because I refuse to disappear. And that's all I'm asking of you. Don't disappear. Come here first. We'll figure out the rest together." A man in the 3rd row raised his hand. He was in his 40s, wearing a Millhaven Transit Authority jacket, and his expression had the particular wariness of someone who had been told no enough times to stop expecting yes. "What if we can't afford a lawyer?" "That's what we're here for," Zara said. "We connect you. We help you build your case before you need one." "What if the department buries it anyway?" "Then we make sure it doesn't stay buried." "How?" She thought about the camera footage that had saved her. She thought about the comment she'd read at 2 in the morning in her apartment. Would any of this have happened if no one had been filming? "By not being quiet," she said. "By being so many people all at once that they can't bury all of us." 4 months after the center opened, Zara was at her desk after closing when her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. "Is this the Colton Center?" A woman's voice, young, controlled. The control of someone working hard not to sound scared. Yes. My name is Delia Park. I was stopped by a police officer last month. He said my handicap placard was expired. It wasn't. He made me get out of the car, and when I told him I had MS and I needed my cane, he told me that wasn't his problem. Zara pulled a notepad toward her. What happened after that? He cited me for obstruction. The charges were dropped, but I filed a complaint, and they sent me a letter saying there was insufficient evidence to proceed. A pause. I don't know what that means. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. It means they closed it without looking hard enough, Zara said. And it means you're not done yet. She took down Delia's information. She told her to come in Thursday morning and bring everything. The citation, the complaint letter, her medical documentation, anything she had. She told her she wouldn't be fighting alone. When the call ended, she set the phone down and looked at the wall across from her desk, where she'd started taping up index cards, one for every open case, color-coded by status. There were 16 cards. 8 of them were red, meaning active and urgent. 3 were yellow, meaning waiting on evidence. 5 were green, meaning moving forward. Tomorrow there would be 17. She turned off the desk lamp and pulled on her jacket and walked out into the cool October air, locking the door behind her. Her knee ached in the cold. It always did. She'd learned not to count on it being different. The fight wasn't clean. It wasn't finished. It probably wouldn't ever be finished, because the thing she was pushing against wasn't a single bad cop or a single corrupt director. It was a logic, a habit of protection that had calcified over years into something that felt like structure. You couldn't dismantle that in a courtroom in one season. But you could put a light in a window. You could make it so that when the next Delia Park looked for someone who would listen, there was someone there to answer the phone. Zara walked to her car, got in, and drove home through a city that was the same as it had always been, imperfect, ongoing, worth fighting for. She was ready for whatever came next.